Welcome, everybody, to episode 5 of Fill the Glass. I'm Kerry Millsap, and today I want to introduce my dear friend, and I'll say it in the American way, Mogens. Well, I'll say it in a hybrid American-Danish way. Mogens, at least I pronounced that part right, Nørgaard. And I pronounced that part wrong, but I'll let Mogens clean up for me in a moment. I met Mogens in Vienna at an Oracle conference in 1995 in a speaker-ready room. I was focused on something that I thought was important. And at the time I was a consulting director at Oracle, I had probably a few dozen people reporting to me, and I was in Vienna to give a presentation, and something was wrong. I can't remember whether it was a phone call I'd gotten that wasn't good news about some project that my team was working on, or something with my presentation or whatever. But I was heads down working on some problem when this guy comes over and he shakes my hand and he says something I didn't understand. And it probably, hello, my name is Mogens. But I just didn't get it. You know, he had an accent and I was busy. So I just didn't get it. So TikTok, after I'd sorted whatever it was that I'd been worried about, I ventured over to say hello again, because he just kind of had this gleam in his eye. And I thought, well, I better go figure out why. And so the second introduction, is when I realized who it was. It was the famous Mogens from the Helpkern internal Oracle mailing list. Helpkern was at the time a kind of a lifeline caliber connection to Oracle's kernel developers and premier support analysts. And this Mogens character had helped me 100 times. I mean, he really was. If I needed to know something about what was going on inside the database, I would ask Helpkern, and this Mogens guy would help me sort it out. So, Mogens, if you would please say your name properly so that it can be on the record instead of my butchering. And then I have a question for you.
My first name is pronounced as if it was spelled M-O-A-N-S, Mogens, Mogens, so a silent G. The last name is just, I mean, in Danish it's Nørgaard. And that's why I usually go by No Good or something else. In America, it's much easier.
Yeah, because
Mogens No Good, and my middle name is Langballe, Langballe. So I usually go by Mogens Longballs No Good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So when we met, you had already built an elite team within Oracle. Was that the first team that you'd built?
I did, back in my younger days when I was almost 18, built a military team, which was my first command, if you can say that, of 10 men. And then many moons later, I ended up in Oracle and built the RDBMS support team and then the premium services team. Both experiences were very good and very giving. Yeah, I think as a leader.
So there are many special things about you. I've known you, as I said, for decades. The reason I wanted you on the show today is because specifically the one attribute of your career that I wanted to talk about is your expertise at team building. And I've never seen anything like it. And I've seen you build teams that were officially sanctioned, thou shalt build a team and you made the team happen kind of teams. And I've also seen sort of unofficial teams built across company boundaries, across technology boundaries in some cases. And that to me is fascinating. And I know from kind of a consumer of your having built teams that I've been a part of, I don't know if you perceive the world that way that I just described it, but that's how it looks from the outside, is that Mogens is an exceptional team builder. And I want to kind of get inside your head about how and why did these teams happen? Is it just something that you normally do? Is it a plan that you calculated and set into the world to implement? Or so how is it that you are, and I'll name, you mentioned the military experience. the premium support team was special. I mean, I know you told me that, oh, we're just this little team in Denmark, under-resourced and so forth, but you were famous worldwide for helping everybody on the planet. You were somehow this little team in Denmark ended up being the gateway into the kernel team at Oracle. And it just kept happening. And the Oak Table, which I want to talk about in a couple of minutes, is another example of that. So was it intentional, or is it just something that comes out of you naturally?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, thank you. If you record this, I would like to take just that part of it and play it for my wife later today.
And in actual fact, I believe we are recording.
So no, it's not until much later in life I realized, because journalists and other people kept asking me about how I created these teams, that I realized I had actually created teams. I never thought about it that way. I never did. And then, of course, I started thinking about how it all came about. And it's first of all, I like people. I like being around people, and I like the networking. And I've always enjoyed taking person A beside me and pointing him to person B over there and saying, you should talk to this guy, stuff like that. Connecting people, as Nokia used to say.
Yeah.
Then I also realized later, much later, that, for instance, the premium services outfit, I at some point in time said to them, listen, we're basically a European, Middle East, Africa, EMEA outfit for troubleshooting associated with Kerry's SPG group in Oracle US. We are the ones they call when they don't know who else to call. So therefore, it's not an option to give up. In that sense, I said to them, we are an elite unit, in the sense that we always have to try one thing more, and another thing, and another thing.
Right.
Never give up. And that sort of set the mood, which enabled people to do many things.
How did you find these people that were so awesome?
The most interesting example is probably premium services. Oracle decided to start a so-called premium services group in each country back in, let's say, 96, 97, meant for doing short-term consulting gigs, but attached to the support organization. And I started out persuading the 3 best Oracle persons I knew in Denmark at that time, people that were kind of grand figures in the community.
Yeah.
And I said to them, we are going to have a lot of fun. We're going to be at least 5 guys. It's going to be so fun. And within a year, we were 32. It turned out that nobody could say no to join a group like that. And that created sort of what I would term a whirlwind effect.
Yeah. No,
sucking other people in. And of course, they would come and say, I think we should hire this person.
Right. Yeah, it was a huge magnet from looking at it on the outside looking in.
We ended up being 38 people in premium services in Denmark. And I think premium services in the UK was 12, and they were 8 in Germany. And I mean, both countries are about 1 million times bigger than us. So it was definitely the world's biggest premium services organization.
So let me cut forward to the year 2000. And I want to try to paint a picture with words. So I'm at your home in a little bitty town in Denmark called Måløv. and we're sitting around your kitchen table. And I don't even think it was your big kitchen table yet. It was just a kitchen table at that point. And sitting around your kitchen table, you've got Tom Kite, Lex DeHaan, Anyo Kolk, Jonathan Lewis, Graham Wood, Tone Kopelars, Chris Antonini, Steve Adams from Australia, Bryn Llewellyn, Robin Sands, James Morrill, John Bresnovich, Tim Gorman, Karen Morton, Thomas. I mean, it just goes on. And Fritz and Yoje and Andy Zitelli and Johannes and Michael and Peter. And how in the world do you manage to collect all that talent in a little bitty town in Denmark?
And you.
I mean, these people are stacked on the floor at night like cordwood, because your house is big enough to hold people, but not what my wife and I would consider big enough to hold people. We would never invite as many guests as you did. And people were tucked in at the top of a ladder in a library in a little attic holes. And Stephen Hazley and Jeff Holt and Tone Kopelars and I are lying on the floor in a corner in sleeping bags and air mattresses. And how did you do that?
Well, it started out with you visiting Oracle Denmark in the late 90s, doing a presentation, and I thought that's a great idea. And then when I started Miracle in 2000 along with some good people, we invited people we knew, and then we invited other people that we either knew or that they would like to invite that could attend for free. The whole idea was that from they left the airport until they entered the airport again, I would take care of whatever they needed. However, most of them would have to sleep on mattresses on the floor. So I would have 17 of the world's absolutely best database experts sleeping on floors. And I would start waking them up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then we had 3 bathrooms, and they would have 15 minutes for that. And then the next 3 people would be, and even the third bathroom was at the neighbors, so they had to wade through sleet and snow to get there. And yet people loved it because we gathered and talked and exchanged ideas and tried out stuff and all that. And then, we had a lot of paying customers for these seminars. And then these world experts were sitting in the back, and the attendees could talk to them later or in the breaks about everything they wanted to do. So that created the perfect storm, really.
Or in your infinite day nights. So I'm going to show you a picture, and I want you to explain why. I want you to explain what this is, why it matters, and why you brought it into the context of our group.
Yeah, this is the Copenhagen Niels Bohr Institute. Niels Bohr, the physicist who did a lot about the atom and things like that. And we did a session there for a lot of our guests at one time, where they sat at the place where the original so-called Copenhagen meeting took place. This is actually us. It's Carrie in the middle. No,
I'm this one right here.
Yeah. So the one to the left there is Niels Bohr, of course. And we sort of replicated the Copenhagen meetings. We thought we brought great minds together in Copenhagen and got away wiser, all of us, for that. Yeah. And I think what we later made into a more or less formal network has made a lot of difference for most of us.
It was inspiring. I mean, we knew we weren't these people in terms of the influence we had, was not on par with the people in this photo. But thinking of ourselves in the same physical location as they were at one point, and thinking of ourselves as having a relationship that was similar to the relationships they had with each other. It's hard to describe, but it provided a model for us, because I know the main criterion for entry into this little club we had, this oak table thing we had, was, does this person show his or her work? Does this person just say things and because they feel they're true, or does this person actually show, here's why I believe this is true, so that other people can duplicate it? And Jonathan Lewis can say, yes, it's true, but it's slightly more true if you understand that this is also an input, and things like that. And I think you had Mogens, you had something a little more formal about, you were happy to discover when you'd given bad advice, or happy to discover that you'd been wrong. Explain that.
Yeah, I read something back in the year 2000 around New Year's time. A Danish philosopher who had said some years earlier, "You're always wrong." What he actually meant was, of course, that you discover that what you knew has slightly changed over time. There's not much you knew with certainty a couple of years ago that you know with the same certainty today. You've gotten wiser, or you may even have found out you were playing wrong. And I formalized that in my own company, Miracle, which I founded in 2000 with friends, where I said to the employees, you will have to learn to really be happy when you find out you've been wrong. You have to not fight it if you discover that you've been wrong. Be happy. You can now run out and tell all the customers that you told them something wrong in all those years, and now you can tell them something better. That's probably one of the hardest things as a human to learn, I think. To be joyous when you find out you've been wrong.
Right. In SPG, I used to talk about that learning is a phase transition. Think about a finite state machines you learn about in computer science. And learning is a transformation from not knowing to knowing. It's the edge between the not knowing node and the knowing node. And you would think that moving along that transition is a joyous thing. But I know that a lot of people that were not of our mind about things like being happy to have been wrong. I finally figured out that if people are incapable of accepting that they at one point in history didn't know something, if they don't feel like it makes them too vulnerable to admit that they didn't know something, then it makes it difficult for them to celebrate learning. Right? Because if your whole identity is, I have to be right all the time, it doesn't work. You can't learn. You prohibit yourself from learning by putting yourself in the state where you believe that you have to be perfect to be okay.
Yeah.
There's a video, and I'll link to it in the recording. It's a lady named Barbara Sher, S-H-E-R, and it's a TEDx talk called "Isolation is the Dream Killer, Not Your Attitude." It's some kind of a group that she was a part of that had a variety of different people, some type of a support group. And the kind of the hallmark attribute of this group is that people would say what they wish that they could have. They would say what they want. And other people in the room would go, well, I've got a cousin who does that. You can spend a day with her at her job and you can learn how to do that. And it's the most amazing story of just normal people in a room saying what they wish they could have, and other people going, well, that would actually be easy for me to give that to you. I know that person. One lady's dream was to dance with Patrick Swayze. And another lady in the room said, that's not preposterous at all. My daughter runs a dance studio and he comes in there all the time. No big deal. And that's how it was when you're in a room with Jonathan Lewis and Steve Adams and Tom Kite. You say, I always wondered what would happen if I tried to parse a query that was a query against 255 tables. And Jonathan would go, oh, I've done that. Let me show you what it does. I can fire that up and show you the test. And he's just, he's three guys down at the table. And then I remember being stuck on something in VI. And I said, does anybody know? And Peter Graham goes, oh yeah, I know how to do that. Let me come over and show you. I think every culture in the world, every religion has this story about in the afterlife, if you've been good, you can know everything after you die. You can have access to all the information that you've always wanted in your life, but didn't have access to as a mortal. And I'm giving myself chill bumps describing this, but that's how it felt in your house, because you would get answers to questions that you didn't know the answers to, that you'd struggled maybe for months or weeks or years. Sometimes it would create a project. Oh my God, that's a great question. I have no idea, but let's do it. How would we make a test for that? And it's just, that's the kind of stuff we talked about, because that's the kind of stuff we were interested in. It wasn't an assignment or anything. We're just sitting there with beers and cables and routers. You remember before wireless, you couldn't see what color the table was because there's so many routers and power adapters. And I remember Anyo brought in this laptop that weighed 42 pounds and had fans on it that would literally hover the laptop over the table. I think the power supply had a fan. Anyway, but we just had all these fascinating opportunities to learn from each other. And it really was a special deal.
I believe, first of all, that since then, I've never had, or my folks have never had, an IT-related question they couldn't get answered in this group, which we formed. That's just an amazing feeling. You can actually access this AI thing called the Oak Table Network, and it will come out with answers, and it becomes better over time because people spread out from the pure Oracle world to other worlds, and are pretty much in all the interesting corners of the IT industry. So that's really been, to me, an amazing journey, an amazing experience.
Yeah. And I guess the term that I should use, I think it's a normally accepted term for what I'm trying to describe, is psychological safety. I remember feeling at home in the room. I'm very nervous. I went to a Mr. Harkey's service a couple of days ago, and I told his daughter, I said, well, I'll be in the corner if you need me. I'm very uncomfortable around people that I don't know fairly well, but I was never uncomfortable in your house. And I don't know how to duplicate that, but I'm fortunate to have lived it.
Yeah, me too. It's been a fantastic network. So that's been a world-class team.
Hey, folks that are here live, do you have any questions? I only left you a minute or two, but I'm happy to use it talking about what you might want to ask. And
for that gentleman who just wrote the word, the word is hygge.
Hygge.
With two G's, H-Y-G-G-E, hygge. Yeah.
And what does that mean?
It means being cozy, comfortable.
Warm, got it.
Nice around. Yeah.
So my question to you, Mogens, would be, how would you think, or I guess the first thing is, do you think it's possible this day and age to indoctrinate or to create or grow that team with younger people? Are they of the same mindset? How common is that to find that?
It's a very, very good question. I think so. I'm talking to my son, who has weird and wonderful friends, although they are scattered and they talk on something called Discord. But they are close to, and they help each other with whatever problems they meet. They trust each other in that rather small group he's talking about. I think it's definitely possible, even in our global village today.
Hey,
there you go.
It's been a great show. Thank you very much, Mogens. I will I'll put up the obligatory, if you are interested in future episodes, hit us at methodr.com. The methodr.com/subscribe is a way to get on the mailing list to be notified about things like this. we'll do it again next Tuesday. Mogens, thank you so much. And everybody else, thank you for joining us. And we'll see you in a week.